Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Future of Secure Positioning and Timing, Insights from Jammertest 2025.
Hello, good morning also from my side.
So, I'm Shadman, a technical marketing person at u-blox, specializing in GNSS, IMU fusion, and high precision. I've been part of u-blox since 8 years now, and before this role, I was working as an application engineer, bridging between our R&D and customers. Today, I will present the positioning key findings from our latest jamming and spoofing campaign. Over to you, Samuli.
Thanks, Shadman. Yes, my name is Samuli Pietilä. I work here at u-blox. I'm responsible for the timing and infrastructure product line. I will be speaking today about timing tests that we did at the Jammertest in Norway this autumn.
Okay. Let's look at the agenda. First, we'll see the poll results, which were taken at the time of signing up for the webinar. Then we will talk about the field testing, why field testing is important, what was our setup during the Jammertest, an overview of the test area as well, showing you different interface and scenarios which we recorded during the Jammertest. And then we will jump towards the actual results from jamming, meaconing, and spoofing tests. Before going to the Q&A session, we will share with you what's coming up next for our products. And you can ask your questions in the chat. We will try to answer them during the webinar. And also, if we have enough time, we will discuss it at the end as well. If not, then we will get back to you after the webinar as well. Okay, so let's go towards the poll. There was a poll at the signing up for the webinar. These results now give us a good snapshot of who's in the room and what challenges matters most to you. We have a diverse audience from telecom and timing to automotive, to drones, robotics, mapping, and also research areas, which shows how broadly this GNSS resilience impact different industries. When we look at the concerns, jamming and spoofing clearly dominates it with more than half of the percentage of people talking about it. And this really confirms why events like Jammertest are essential, and they directly address the top risks people face in the field. So first thing, why field testing? The opportunity to do these tests in an open area outside of the lab is very important, because in general, GNSS spoofing and jamming is illegal, and not everything can be tested in the lab. Field testing matters because real-world environments expose GNSS receivers to challenges that no lab setup can fully replicate. By testing under true open sky jamming and spoofing, we can see how the system behaves in actual real-world situations. And our objective for this was to prove positioning continuity and integrity under live open sky jamming and spoofing. We are based in Tampere, Finland, and for the Jammertest, we had our test car, which we drove to Andøya in Norway, where this event took place. So let's come to our setup. We have our test car, which we drove from Tampere to Andøya. And for the positioning setup, the setup included multiple DUTs in one vehicle. We monitored and recorded them. All the receivers were connected to the same antenna, A and B, all-band antenna, to guarantee identical RF exposure, same jamming, same spoofing for all the receivers. To compare DUT across, to actually compare the position, we used a post-processed Planix truth system as a reference. It's not an absolute ground truth. especially under heavy interference, but it gives a consistent baseline for relative comparison. So at least we know how each receiver is then working. For timing setup, Samuli, if you can.
Yes, thanks, Shadman. So in addition to the test car, we also built a timing test setup in the Blake Community House, which served as the headquarters of the Jammertest. The organizers kindly provided a very stable 1 PPS reference to the building, which we could use as a reference for our measurements. They also provide a high quality antenna, so we have the same antenna for all the dudes that we are measuring. And we brought with us a 8-channel time interval counter, which allowed us to actually measure 8 devices under the exact same conditions. And we will be seeing some of the results later on from there as well.
Okay, so regarding the test area overview, there were actually 3 different test areas, but our main focus was at test area 1, which was close to the headquarters. The main reason being that it included the high power stationary jamming, high power unintentional radio frequency interference, stationary spoofing for both positioning and navigation, and also spoofing for the timing. Lastly, it had the Meaconing setup as well. The area included 2 main transmission points. One was at the headquarters and the other was at the mountain top, and the name of the mount is Ramnan. This gave a complete wide area coverage of this test area, and we chose this spot between the headquarter and the cemetery, which are both under this coverage area, so that we do not go out of the jamming and spoofing interferences. And the car was being driven back and forth in this area during the testing. Some tests we remained stationary at one point for a short period of time and then drove during the rest of the scenarios. Most of them are like 15 minutes. Some even went on to 1 hour of interference running. So yeah, in later you will see these graphs again as well, and the red marker basically shows you that the jamming is indicated. The blue one, which is not visible here, will mean that the environment is clean without any jamming or any interferences at all. Okay, so let's talk about different interferences scenarios that we will be sharing the results of with. So starting from the very first one, jamming, there are core waveform that we took. The first one being the continuous wave, the second being swept continuous wave, and then the PRN like noise. So these are 3 jammers that we tested or checked during the jammer test. Then there will be tests from the advanced jamming, where we see more of these drifting continuous wave across different bands, how it impacts different bands, and also the PRN with power amp, so how the receivers behave in case when the jamming power is increasing during the test. Then over to the Meaconing. We have results from single Meaconing interference and multi-sources as well. Then also we have these compound scenarios where Meaconing is merged with or in parallel with spoofing as well, or there is jamming being done while Meaconing signals are available. Meaconing is simply your good or true signals, but they are offset at off time. So that's the main difference. Then regarding the positioning spoofing, we have 3 different types in case of positioning. Incoherent positioning with synthetic ephemerides. Then there's incoherent positioning again, now with the true ephemerides or broadcast signals, and then the coherent broadcast true ephemerides. The main distinction is purely where the satellite orbit data comes from. In case of synthetic, it's something that the attacker invents it and geometry is not tied to the real satellites. The real and broadcast signals, attacker copies the real satellites, and geometry looks very legitimate. And coherent means that it's smooth, phased aligned, and there are no jumps compared to the real signals. So it's very easily, it's very hard to detect these coherent signals. And then the incoherent, where the receiver actually detects an abrupt change, a misalignment, and it's easy to spot in that case. Then we have the timing spoofing, the incoherent timing, where there is an offset in terms of time, some leap seconds, with both synthetic ephemeris and broadcast ephemeris, both incoherent and coherent one. So let's start with the jamming resilience test now. On the first slide, you see 3 different types of jamming happening. The test 1.21 and 1.25 were from the continuous wave. Here in this one setup, there are 2 different tests. The first one, 1.21, is where L1 only signals are jammed, and 1.25 is where all bands are jammed. Not bands, but these signals, L1, GLONASS 1, L2, L5, and E6. Just to give you a bit of understanding of what you are looking at, the first graph is the position error. This is what we have computed against the post-process truth. The second one is actually the receiver's fixed mode, like the top one is the RTK fixed, if it has reached the ambiguity fixed. The second one is the float RTK. The third one is the DGNSS, meaning that it has the correction, but it hasn't been able to reach any float mode or fixed mode. The fourth one is the SPS fix, which is only a 3D fix. The next one is the dead reckoning mode in case of receivers which have sensors. And the last one is a no fix mode, when the solution is invalid and we mark it as no fix. The next 2 plots are for the interferences, the first one being the jamming state, the second the spoofing state. You can see these flags in our UBX messages under UBX sec sig, where you can see if the pointer. So here you can see jamming, no jamming indicated, and then there's a warning indicated. You can see it here. Similarly for spoofing, no spoofing indicated, spoofing indicated, and spoofing affirmed. The last plot is for CNO values. It basically gives a median signal strengths. So here you can see all the signals that are configured by the receiver, and here you can actually see the drop in the CNO level when the spoofing happens, or the jamming happens, sorry. So for this case, we have the continuous wave. Let me put the pointer again and click on this. So we had the live streaming from the host for the spectrum analyzer. And here you can see how the continuous wave tone looks like when jamming. So here it's multi-signal jamming. It's a single tone jamming, 1 peak on each of this signal, and so it jams. It's easily detected by the receiver. And the second one is the swept or drifting continuous wave, where jamming signals jammers sweep across selected frequency bands. And if I show you here, the main difference, you can see that instead of a single tone, now it's across much more wider area for each of the signal being jammed. If it is a B1, E1 or L1 signals being jammed, the B1I is also impacted. Similarly, you can see GLONASS, and also here for the L6 band, it impacts B3 as well. So it's more difficult when this kind of jamming is happening. The third one is slightly different. If you see this spectrum of this one, it's basically modulates the PRN, the jammer transmit signals modulated with pseudo-range noise. So this is how it looks, making the jammer acting more like a spoofer. making distortion to the signals by impacting the PRN and the most challenging jamming tests. Later, we will see these jammers many times in other tests as well. So it's better to understand how these jammers look like as well. So coming to the results, for the first one, when it's a continuous wave, single tone, you can see the receiver keeps a very good position accuracy with L1 only jammed, and when the other signals are jammed, it drops to float mode, but maintains good position accuracy within 10 meters of the solution. When we go to a bit more difficult one, where we have the swept CW, you see that L1 only signal does not impact the performance as it shouldn't be. And when it comes to all band, all signals jammed, the receiver actually goes to a no fix, because here you can see that all the signals are almost jammed. And even it is visible here, the signals are dropped significantly. Yeah, what you see here is that the receiver is not in RTK fixed mode. It's not because of any issue, but rather we had some trouble with the corrections during the test, and the receiver wasn't able to get those corrections, and therefore it is in standard precision solution. Lastly, for the PRN, you can see it again maintains a good position accuracy and L1 band only, and drops again to a no fix mode when the solution or the jamming is for multiband. Okay, then going towards more advanced jamming. The first of this is the PRN pyramid jamming. So think of the PRN jamming again. What happened here is that in this case, the jamming actually started with just the E6 signal. Then more signals were being jammed every time. So it was a long test. It started with just E6, and then after every 4 to 5 minutes, there was a new signal that was jammed. And it went on until all the signals were jammed till here. And then the reduction in the signals being jammed came up till to E6. There was a bit of portions in between. The orange areas show here the times where the signals are actually jammed. What you see is that even when just E6 signal was jammed, the receiver correctly identifies the jamming and indicates it. And when multiple signals are jammed, we also see that position is quite nicely until this point where all the signals are jammed until L1, and there you start to see that the receiver goes to a no fix without many huge jumps. And this is also visible from this median signal strengths as well. Then if we look at the other set of tests, which is more like a single drift, so it's drifting across different bands. The first two tests are for L1 band, where the signals are jammed as shown here. And the L1 signals are jammed like the B1I, L1, and E1. And then the next two are for jamming of the rest of the band, starting from the E6 till L5. You see that the position accuracy remains quite good throughout all these four tests, and it remains in RTK fixed mode maximum time, except a few points where it drops to standard precision solution. The jamming indication is quite nicely available in all cases. And this is what is actually happening in this case. So the first two are here, 1545 till 1620. It's sweeping across over the period of time, jamming all these signals going in between, which is basically this region, the L1 area, and then it goes the other way as well, started from 162 till 1545. Same is the case here. It starts from 11520, which is this part, this end of the bands, and then it goes across the whole range of the L5, L2, and E6 signals until this point, 1300 megahertz. And then it goes the other way. In all these cases, we see that the receiver is able to work well, maintain its good position accuracy and throughout. Okay, then for the jamming part, in case of positioning, the last one is the PRN with the power amp. Here what you are seeing is that the jamming starts very slowly at a very low power of 7.9 microwatts, and then it gets to 50 watts by the end or till the middle, and it's a 2 dB increment within the test, and the power level step time is 20 seconds. So you can see actually how the jamming is increasing as the time goes, and then it comes back to this point. In this case, the main thing that you can see is that the jamming is indicated pretty early. That is around 0.3 milliwatts and minus 5 dBm, and it keeps detecting it to the very end as well. There's a portion in between, as this jamming is for all these signals. The receiver loses the no 3D fix, which is understandable given all the signals are being jammed, but the solution does not fly away at any point and maintains a good position accuracy overall afterwards. Okay, over to you, Samuli.
Thanks, Shadman. Okay, so let's look at the timing test setup as well, the stationary setup in the Blake community house. So I have selected here the pyramid jammer case that Shadman already described. This is some, I would say, a good summary of all the previous jamming test cases, exercising the receiver's capabilities quite nicely. I have added here also the picture of the live spectrum feed that the organizer was providing. So here we can see all the lower bands being jammed, and here also then the upper L1 bands being jammed. I'm comparing here our ZF9G on the left and then a competitor device on the right. The periods with the blue background, they are the ones where the jammer was active, and then between each step there is a short break with a clear signal. What we can see is as more and more bands get jammed, the time pulse gets a little bit more restless, but anyways remains quite nicely under control. And only at the center, at the top of the pyramid, where absolutely every band is being jammed, then the time pulse is being lost. Comparing to the competitor device, which seems to lose it already one step before, which is a bit surprisingly since the L1 signal is still there. It should be doable to get a good time pulse out of that one. And then we see also the jamming indicator quite nicely detects the onset correctly, and also then offset of each of the jamming cases. And here we can see also the signal to noise ratios. You can see how they drop more and more signals as we go to the top of the pyramid. And then on the next slide, just a little notification, or maybe some of the audience are not aware about the built-in spectrum analyzer in our receiver. So for sure, the jamming flags that we provide are good and reliable, but for those users who want to dig a little bit deeper, there is a built-in spectrum analyzer in our receivers. Here again, you can see the spectrum plot as provided, the live video feed by the organizers, and then here on the bottom we can see the spectrum view from the u-blox receiver, and you can see quite nicely the same shape of the L1 spectrum here, and then here on the left the lower L2, L5 bands being also contaminated by the jamming. So this is quite nice feature. During R&D phase, you can detect if you have any clock harmonics or some other interference in the GNSS band, but then also if you want to dig a little bit deeper in the RF environment during jamming spoofing events, this gives you more insight what is happening in the air around you. And with that, I think we can go to the conclusion of the jamming section.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the key takeaways for the jamming testing: early and reliable jamming detection. What we saw is that with jamming is detected consistently in all different types of jamming, and detection threshold is very low, around -5 dBm, and early warning before any PVT fails as well. We have a stable performance and the single band jamming. RTK fix remains there when the single band jamming happens, and multi-band redundancy keeps position stable. Smooth degradation under multi-band as well. No sudden jumps. Position and time remains bounded and reliable. Spoofing warnings, what you would have seen is that it will trigger under heavy jamming, and strong jamming distorts correlation peaks, spoofing alerts triggered. Jamming can distort signals enough to activate spoofing indicator. That's how we have implemented it, and the PVT integrity is still preserved. Fast recovery when jamming ends. This is also something visible, that instant satellite reacquisition and immediate return to an RTK fix when signals reappear. So moving on to the next one, the Meaconing resilience. The first of which is the stationary Meaconing from a single receiver. Here we are looking at two different tests. The first one is 3.13, a Meaconing from a single source. And the second one is Meaconing again with a single source, but with an initial jamming, a jamming of all the signals of PRN at 50 watts. So what you see here from ZX20P, again, we had issue with the corrections with this receiver, and you can see when the Meaconing happens, the position accuracy remains well in bound. The position remains there, and the receiver is in SPG mode. The jamming is indicated correctly, the spoofing is indicated correctly, the signals distortion can be visible here, and then it is an overall good solution. Whereas if you see that the competitors, one of which is fly away to a different location that is like 2000 meters away, as you can see here, the spoof point. This is the actual source of the spoof Meaconing. And then for, in this case, competitor A is not visible because the other area is quite big. It was also drifting slightly towards a different path. For the second part of the second test, where there was initial jamming, you can see it here. The area where the receiver is actually in a no fix mode is the point where the jamming was happening. And after jamming, it's mostly difficult for the receivers to recover, but the X20P detects the correct signals and maintain the lock on the correct position as well. So the position still remains pretty good. Whereas if you see the competitors B and A, the position has drifted to the actual position of the spoofer. And yeah, while u-blox maintain its integrity and correct position in this case. Going towards the Meaconing from two receivers. So what's happening here is that in this, there's two Meaconing transmitters, RX1 and RX2, as seen here, were active. The alternate at 10 watt with increasing rapid switching. And so they were switching in between, creating fast changing delays intended to destabilize the receiver. And despite this, the X20P maintains a stable accuracy throughout the entire scenario, showing only very small deviations at the start, but it maintains the good accuracy overall in all the cases. And again, what you can see is that the spoofing and the jamming alerts are there for the whole period of time very nicely. And signals here also show the distortion of Meaconing happening in this case. In case of our competitor, again, the position is being spoofed to a wrong position at this time, and then it improves it. But there are a lot of times in between where it goes to a no fix mode as well. Okay, moving on to the next one. So in this test, Meaconing came from two different transmitters, RX1 and RX2, and the attacker rapidly switching between them while also adding a jamming across multiple bands. So it's not just like previous one, not just a switching between these two transmitters, but also there's additional Meaconing that reduce the quality of the signals in this area. So what it does, our X20P receiver, it tries to mitigate those signals, tries to use the available good signals for positioning, and once it cannot, it just drops to no fix. Instead of going or targeting or getting to an incorrect position, we tend to go towards no fix. So integrity over continuity is something that we have chosen for this solution. And you can see that the indication is always there. The spoofing is affirmed. Warnings for jamming is there. In case of our competitors, all three of them, we see that the position is not maintained and the position drifts away quite far away, and it outputs the position as well for those cases. Here's the visual of this, the competitor B while being drifting and then jumping to a wrong position. Competitor C and A are also jumping to the incorrect position in this case. Okay, for this case, this is a more challenging one. What's happening here is that we had the Meaconing coming from the RX1 on the mountain using both L1 and L2 bands, while a separate spoofer transmitter was broadcasting on L1 from a different location. So the receiver was being attacked by two independent sources at the same time, each trying to pull the solution in a different direction. The ZX20P initially tries to mitigate it, and here you can see the time it tries to mitigate. The signals here you see are quite bad. But once the signals become inconsistent, it refuses to follow the false route and limits their, instead of being dragged away, it goes to a no fix mode. So in this point, you see that the receiver is no longer in a fix mode, although it still reports the jamming and spoofing quite nicely in this case. All competitors, however, are pulled fully into this spoof trajectories. The spoofer was actually trying to push this route. So this is the type of spoofer that is trying to give this kind of a position to the receiver, and it was able to accomplish it with these devices. And this is how it looks on the map. So in our case, X20P, it remains quite nicely within this area, although after this point it's outputted no fix. It didn't provide any solution, which is understandable given that the signals are very bad. In case of all the rest of the guys, here is the correct trajectory or the correct place, but it jumps and in this bay area, and this forms a circle. Similarly, this comparator also jumps across multiple meters, and same is the case here. The jumps and the positions are quite bad in this case. But in our case, we are prioritizing safety over continuity. Okay, then Samuli.
Yes, so let's look also from the timing point of view how the Meaconing looks like. So here we have selected the test case number 3.3.1, which is a Meaconing test where they rebroadcast the real GNSS signals with a small time delay. And the purpose of this kind of attack is to fool the receiver so it would output the positioning of the Meaconing system's antenna, not its own antenna, but the Meaconing system's antenna position. And also there will be a small time delay because of the rebroadcasting happens a little bit later than the actual real signal. And in this case, they are ramping the power from 1 milliwatt up to 10 watts and back in 5 dB steps. So again, on the left, we see the u-blox ZF9T. The time pulse offset remains quite nicely under control, whereas the competitor device here has big problems after the power starts ramping up. It kind of loses completely the time pulse. It's out of scale of this picture. I'm here plotting plus minus 200 nanoseconds in this picture. Jamming indicator. So our receiver raises the jamming indicator as the power of the Meacon signal is strong enough, and also quite early we already noticed that this is a spoofing signal. We say spoofing indicated and even spoofing affirmed. One thing I would like to point out here is that in the competitor device, this period of time, the time pulse is already lost. It's already far away from the real time. However, there is no jamming indication. There is definitely no spoofing indicator. So the competitor device is not giving any warning of this kind of situation where the time pulse is lost. And the same happens here when the power is ramping down again. Here the time pulse is still lost, but there is no warning in terms of jamming or no warning in terms of spoofing. And we can see it also on the CORN0 plots, the signal strengths. For our receiver, we keep tracking the real signal, and you can see the signal strength goes down, down, down as the noise from the spoofer, the Meaconer goes up. Whereas the competitor device, at some point, it just gives up on the real signals and locks onto the stronger signals from the Meaconing system. Okay, so that was from the Meaconing point of view. Over to you, Shadman, for the summary.
So the key takeaways for Meaconing: u-blox rejects false position across all Meaconing scenarios: single source, dual source, alternative, stationary, mobile. We did not follow any false or Meaconing trajectories. That was good. Spoofing Meaconing alerts trigger correctly in all the cases where we saw spoofing because of Meaconing. The alerts were always risen to the correct and without any consistency checking fail, and there was no false spoofing. Multiband and time consistency checks are extremely strong. u-blox consistently detects when signals disagree, rejects unstable and contradictory Meaconing signal. Combined Meaconing plus jamming still does not break the integrity. Even in case of simultaneous jamming plus Meaconing, does not drift into these spoofed zones, and position snaps back to ground truth without instability. u-blox stays grounded in reality, no kilometer level deviations, no latch on spoofing routes, no collapse of fake coordinates, and fast and clean recovery as it was shown before. As soon as the interference is stopped, signals return, Pietilä enters the RTK quickly. Now moving on towards our spoofing resilience. Starting from the first one, these tests show incoherent position spoofing using synthetic ephemeris, where the attacker injects signals that don't really match real satellite motion. So starting from here in the multi-band spoofing, it's like a ramp up, again, a power ramp. The last position and time jump. It's a stationary spoofer. The spoofing point was at the symmetry. So what happens here is that the power of the spoofer keeps increasing until it gets to maximum, and when it gets maximum, the CNO levels of the signals are significantly reduced. And what you see here, even when all these spoofing attacks are happening, the receiver remains pretty good, under 1 meter, and the receiver remains in RTK fixed mode. What you see here is that as the power ramp increase, and you see starting to see a bit of degradation. The jam indicators are well enabled as well, and they detect it quite nicely over the period of time. The second test is happening where the large position and time jump happen with the GPS L1 only, and the third is large position and time jump with Galileo E1 only. Keeping in mind these are incoherent position spoofing and synthetic ephemeris, so the signals are not real signals, and there's also quite a big jump in the position as well. So the receiver, for receiver, it's quite easy to detect. So in this case, when GPS signals are bad, you will see that GPS CNO levels are dropped, position is maintained, RTK is maintained, spoofing and warning of the jamming are identified correctly both in GPS and Galileo case. So this is, I would say, the easiest spoofing scenarios which we can manage. Moving on to the next one. Again, in this test, the attacker used a real broadcast signal, so that makes it a bit more trickier because the data is real, but the pseudo ranges are manipulated because it's still an incoherent position. Um, uh, the geometry and the Doppler didn't align with the real signals, and the spoofing attempt became incoherent for our receiver. So what you see here is the receiver starts good, pretty good at RTK fixed mode, and as soon as the jamming and spoofing happens, we detect it correctly, and when we see that the receiver is latched on the incorrect signals, instead of outputting wrong position or bad position, it goes to a no fix. So it remains in no fix mode, integrity over continuity, and the as it can also seen from the navsig, this CNO levels are pretty good because these are the spoofed signals, because these are both L1 and the GPS and Galileo, all bands. So you can see that the CNO levels are there. However, the receiver rejects them and does not use them for positioning. Whereas you can see for all the rest of the competitors, few of them go on to this wrong position pretty early, and some of them eventually give in to the wrong position, while u-blox maintains its integrity and does not jump in those locations. Same as mentioned earlier, the simulated position was a stationary position in this case, and the position was at the cemetery. And in all these cases, you can see that the position has jumped to the cemetery location, whereas the car was actually in this spot. Now, on the next one, it is a much more trickier one. In this, attacker uses the broadcast true ephemeris, meaning the spoof signals look physically realistic, but this is again an incoherent spoofing. The X20P detects the threat quite early. There are two tests that were happening in this case, one with the Galileo and the other with GPS. In this case, what it does is that instead of pushing it to a single location or single stationary point, it simulates a driving route. So this is the route which is being pushed by the spoofer. So what you see here from the competitor is that it tries to reject it, but eventually gives in and goes to this incorrect spoofed location, both of these competitors. Whereas for us, what happens is that when the signals are being spoofed, the receiver goes to a no fix. It tries to maintain its integrity in both of these cases, from GPS and Galileo as well. And we correctly identify the spoofing uh, indication and the warning indication. And you can also see it quite nicely here. The GPS signal levels are looking high, but they are incorrect and therefore not used. Similarly, in this case, the GPS signals are having higher CNO, which are again not correct and therefore not used. Moving on to the next one, Now this is the much more trickier because it's a coherent position and also it's broadcast with true ephemerides. So in this case, you can think of it as real signals, and also they are in sync with the time as well. So it's very difficult to detect. There's only very brief amount of deviation. So what it does is that initially it's in the correct spot, but then it drifts away. It drags the position to a different location. Again, the same simulated route one, which you can see here from both the competitors, they are being spoofed. Whereas for our case, in the first one where this combination of GPS plus Galileo, both are spoofed, we go down to a no fix mode instead of latching onto this kind of a spoofer, and the signals level look distorted as well. The second part of this test is where the simulation route is there, but also there is initial and continuous jamming as well. So it jams the real signals and then it simulates or sends in the simulated signals. So in this part is actually where the jamming happens. It jams all the bands and then spoofed signals are visible for the receivers only, and we remain in a no fix mode for over the period of time. Now coming towards the time incoherence, time spoofing, and the first one is being the static plus pseudo range error. We see that the spoofer has synthetic ephemerides and incorrect time. We have the OSNMA based detector. It detects that there is some sort of spoofing happening. It detects it correctly. The time is not jumped. It remains in the good solution. The receiver is capable of using healthy satellites, like for example in CLONUS in this case and Beidou, and maintains its position accuracy very nicely in RTK fixed mode. Also detects the jamming and spoofing area correctly. Whereas the competitors, both are slightly spoofed. The position is dragged, and it slightly deviates from the correct path. The next one, again, incoherent time spoofing. In this case, it's static and pseudo-range error with initial and continuous jamming. So what's happening here is that the GPS and Galileo signals are initially jammed, and then afterwards they are being spoofed. So what happens is that it's being spoofed, and then for the rest of the bands which are available, those signals are then jammed again as well. So you see here initial jamming, all signals gone, the receiver is in a no fix mode. Then there's a short period of time when it tries to recover, and afterwards again the spoofing is impacted and the rest of the signals are being jammed by the jammer. You see that the competitors, they again track to a bit incorrect position, and in this case, while the spoofing happens, it's deviating quite far away as well. So let me continue. Yeah, so this is how it looks. And the precise position of the X20P quite nicely at the same spot with a few deviation, whereas the spoofed position on these couple of receivers, they were quite far away. Now for the case of the coherent time and spoofing broadcast ephemeris, it's again a tough situation when the time is coherent and also true signals are being used. In this case, OSNMA plays a big role of giving the authentication. We see that quite nicely. In this case, again, the jamming is happening at the start, and then the spoofing plus jamming over the rest of the period. In this case of the pseudo-range error, we have the UTC parameter and nav data manipulation by adding a leap second, 5 minutes of initial jamming prior to spoofing transmission, and then continues on other bands than the spoofed ones. So GPS and Galileo are not jammed, but the rest of the signals are being jammed by the jammer. And even in this case, the position accuracy remains quite nicely within bounds. In case of all the other competitors, the position does drift slightly in different positions, and in this case, also 200 of meters away. Authentication here is something that you can see when the OSNMA is in action, and all the rest of the indicators are there as well. Over to you, Samuli.
Thanks, Shadman. Okay, so let's look also one case of spoofing in the timing setup. This test case I've chosen because this is really targeting the timing receiver, not so much on the positioning receiver. So here what they are doing is they are spoofing the time 15 minutes into the future. And this is quite sophisticated attack in a sense that the spoofer, the attacker, has already somehow find out the coordinates of the receiver antenna, and it has created the spoofing attack so that the position of the spoofer is exactly on the real antenna coordinate. So it's really a vicious attack against a timing receiver. There are three cases. First one is for Galileo only, second one is for GPS only, and the last one is for all signals. And I would like to still point out that this is also quite clever attack in a sense that the spoofing power is relatively low. Because what we have seen in many of these cases, the jammer power, the spoofer power is so strong that it's really easy to detect the changes in the spectrum and the changes in the noise floor, and by that we can quite reliably indicate at least that the attack is ongoing. So if we look at the results, so what we can see that, well, again, on the left we have the u-blox ZF9T and then the competitor device on the right. So both receivers, I mean, did not jump 15 minutes into the future, so that is good. Did not fall for spoofing. But if we look at the 1 PPS output a bit more carefully, we can see again the u-blox 1 PPS is quite nicely bounded within some tens of nanoseconds, whereas the competitor has much bigger problems with holding the 1 PPS. It seems almost like it's toggling between two levels here, which makes the 1 PPS very noisy. And it's a bit surprising because here only the Galileo E1 signal was being spoofed. And the same also here when the GPS L1 signal is being spoofed. So we see also the competitor has some trouble maintaining the time pulse. We see then if you look at the flags, so the u-blox receiver nicely flags the jamming, and also the spoofing flag goes up. Competitor has some delay here in the beginning, but eventually finds it, raises the flag, and the last item they seem to classify so small that it's not even worth of raising the flag. And we can see here the signal strengths as they go down due to the attack. Okay, I think that was the last test case from the spoofing cases.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so going towards the key takeaways. U-blox receivers detect spoofing across all attack types: incoherent, coherent, position and time spoofing, multi-band, combined spoofing plus jamming, synthetic or real ephemerals. U-blox consistently rejects false position, no large jumps, no kilometer level deviations, and no followed spoof paths. Integrity remains intact even under strong attacks. We have different hybrid spoofing detections, hybrid changes, jamming, and OSMA authentication were all flagged for different cases. u-blox outperformed all the competitors. It was clearly seen that competitors did follow spoof trajectories up to 100 of meters, and time spoofing is also rejected in case of UTC manipulation is detected, pseudo-range time shift flagged, and no fake time takeover in these cases. So now let's come to what's next. The next X20 firmware release. The results shown here today are with the development firmware, and the plan is for early 2026. We'll bring these improvements to production, to the firmware release for everyone to be tested by the customers. The next X20 automotive module, and that's coming up. It will consist of having other sensors as well, like the INS, and would support auto. That would make it even more robust in detecting and mitigating the spoofing and jamming scenarios. And lastly, integrity with awareness. The ZX20P continued to deliver reliable and accurate positioning output, demonstrating that robust detection and dependable positioning can coexist. Nevertheless, you should treat a valid fix under flagged conditions with awareness. It indicates strong mitigation capabilities, but also the environment is degraded and caution is advised in all cases. Now, I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. Let's try to see.
We received quite many questions. We cannot really answer all of them in these few minutes, but let me at least take, here is one. There's a question about the jamming and spoofing protection, if it's enabled by default in u-blox receivers or if there is something that needs to be configured. Now, it's a good question. Everything is enabled by default with one exception, the one exception being the Galileo OSNMA authentication, which the user or the host system needs to enable and also needs to provide the authentication keys. So this is not enabled by default, but the jamming detection is enabled by default, and also other spoofing detection mechanisms, algorithms are enabled by default. Should we look maybe another one?
I'm having some difficulty reading the questions. Maybe if you can see.
Okay, there is another question about OSNMA. It seems to be an interesting topic. So was OSNMA active for all tests, and was it in the tight mode? So for the timing tests, OSNMA was enabled, yes, but the receiver that I was showing here, it was not in the tight mode, it was in the what we call the loose mode, which means that it is the receiver is preferring to use the authenticated Galileo satellites, but it will use also other satellites that are not authenticated, GPS, Baidu, so forth, as long as they agree with the authenticated Galileo satellites. Maybe one more we can find.
There is one. Are these results from every test at Andoya? I've seen results from another company that only cited a small number of cases. There's a huge set of test data during the Jammertest. We tried to show as many as we could. There were, I think, few others as well. But yeah, there are quite many different cases. There were one full day of jamming, then there was 1 day of meaconing, and then 1 day of spoofing. And then in the middle, there were some cases here and there. So yeah, these are almost all cases, but there are still a few more cases as well.
And with that, maybe I think it's time to wrap up. We are approaching the end.
Okay. So what to do next? If you need more information, you can go to our website. The recordings of these webinars will be sent to you. The questions that have not been answered yet will be answered, and we'll try to contact you. If you want more information, you can contact us and visit our page or contact us directly. We can collaborate, dig deep in these different scenarios, and yeah. But I think that should be it. We are on time this time. Okay, thank you all for joining in today. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.